room and online. We have quite a few people online, I think. Okay, for those online, I just want to kind of let you know that we're going to be asking questions through the chat, and Ryan's going to be monitoring those and kind of feeding those to me as appropriate. So today is hopefully the first of many Dynamics user groups. So we have a pretty big agenda today. I try to get you guys out of here a little less than 2 hours. I mean, I know this is really exciting, but I know you're all busy as well. So I will try to appreciate that as much as I can. Get you out of here. Our agenda for today. This little window out of my way. I'm going to discuss Project Elevate. So Project Elevate is actually the city's efforts to migrate from DAX 2012 to Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. So you're actually going to get a look at that today. We want to share that starting now all the way through when we actually implement in production. So you gain that level of comfort over time. About the current challenges that we know exist with our current implementation of 2012. We're going to talk about the goals for the 365 project overall. We're going to get a look at who the Elevate team members are, do a project status, and then we're going to do a high-level demo of 365. Ask is that when I do the high-level demo of 365, remember I'm a new user too. So bear with me just a little bit. And then Marnie Hall from the auditor's office, she's going to give us a demonstration of the Accounting Source Explorer. And then we're going to have a department presentation with Mark, who is going to, I'm going to talk for her, with her, sorry, rephrase, about how to create a better service contract. And then at the end, we'll talk just a little bit about ideas of what you guys would like to see for future Dynamics user group sessions, okay? Whether that be 2012, obviously, that we have today, as well as always getting an update or a status with 365. So first thing we're going to talk about is Project Elevate. I don't think I've seen Michelle Hostetler in here. Michelle is a member of the 365 team. Oh, hey, sorry. Project Elevate is actually Michelle's idea. We kind of asked the team members when we first brought them together to come up with some project name ideas. And thank you to everyone who did that. Out of all of them, Project Elevate kind of stuck out to me. So there's a couple reasons for that. To elevate is to raise something up to a higher level, position, or state, to elevate the standards of a group. So that really is what we're trying to do with 365. We're raising the bar for all of us that use 365, right? So some of the challenges that impact us right now, probably no one will disagree that system performance is an issue from time to time, right? Yeah, and that goes for DAX as well as TCM. Sometimes we don't know about problems until it's too late. And by too late, I mean there were 50 POs that didn't reach the vendor and we found out the next day. We want to be proactive with that stuff. And then sometimes we experience significant workflow slowdown as well that kind of holds all of us up. Another challenge for us is access to our data. As many of you know, our reporting is limited, or we have budget analysis, right? I think on a great day, it's about 4 minutes to open. So we're hoping long-term to greatly improve that. And then something that you guys might not know is that when we take DAX down for maintenance, it's usually down for 7 to 8 hours. So obviously we limit how often we do our maintenance. And when we do that maintenance, our vendor and our employee portals are unavailable as well. Party dependencies. So Tyler Content Manager, Tyler Forms, what are those? So TCM, where we have our attachments, that's Tyler Content Manager. Tyler Forms is actually what we use to produce our purchase orders and some other things as well. So we're very dependent on those third-party products right now. And our vendor portal. So we have a less than optimal vendor portal. We'd like to the experience for our vendors. Right now, we require a lot of city support to keep up with our vendors and address problems and add new users. So we want to do that better. Testing when we have new maintenance, we spend tens of hours of resource time testing these each time we have a release. We're kind of going through that process right now. There's no less than 15 of us involved, and I'm guessing we've all probably spent about 10 hours thus far, so 150 hours. So we do all of that manually, right? So we're hoping to kind of change that also. And then something that you guys are very aware of, due to resource constraints, we have limited training, right? We have great user guides. How many? Okay. All right. So I see why you guys came to the room, right? I think we have great training guides, but they are in fact, PDF documents. You have to have them handy for reference. And new employees, they get the link to those documents, but that's all we do today, right? We're resource time. So we want to be able to offer better training for our new employees who are coming in and starting to use Dynamics. And then we also want to be able to do refresher training as well for existing employees. Goals for 365. First and foremost, improve efficiency. We want to get better performance. We want to have better usability. So that's the less clicks concept. We want to learn what we can do better and address pain points. Improve user adoption. So a couple things up there that probably don't mean anything to you guys yet. We will go through them, Workspaces and Task Recorder. So those are two things that I think are going to improve the user experience. And then right now we're kind of connecting remotely to DAX. When we go to 365, it's fully through the browser. So no more having to do data slash, right? We'll all miss that so much. And then, as I stated, we want to improve access to our data. So we're working on some improved reporting features, and then we're using a reporting tool called Power BI. I wanted to have that ready to show you guys today. I didn't quite make it. So next user group, we'll get a look at what Power BI is. Very visual, though, a lot more graphs and things. And then, let me just mute everybody here. So then we also want to revamp our interface capabilities. So that doesn't impact a lot of you that are in, but the auditor's office spends hours every week doing like the AEP invoice import, juror fee, mileage. All of those things have to be kicked off manually. They have to be monitored. Each step in between is manual as well. We want to get to a spot where those are automated processes, right? You guys drop a file, system does the rest. We check at the end, notification if something fails. And then when we go to 365, Microsoft actually updates the system almost monthly, okay? I think I put delivered monthly, but it's actually 10 times a year, those being major releases. So if you think about the amount of time that I talked about that we spend testing for every release, that becomes not feasible, right, when we go to 365. Now, the advantage of this is that our downtime is going to drop from 7 to 8 hours to approximately 30 minutes. Microsoft is actually working really hard to get that down to 0. I'm going to have to see that one to believe it. But what this does mean is that when there are issues identified in the system, those can become part of monthly releases, and we can get a fix in the system a little bit faster than we can today. The other thing that we're going to do, we're going to move to Microsoft hosting. What this means is that we're going to have increased system performance, monitoring as well. So if there are processes that are supposed to kick off and they fail, we actually get notification about it, right? That doesn't happen today. We get notification from our vendor who says they didn't get a PO. I want to move more of that monitoring up front. We also want to make sure that we're properly sized. So what that means is that based on our number of users, based on the transactions that we put through, Microsoft is always monitoring that. And they're saying, hey, you need to do this to improve your environment. constant 365, a year that's happening. So some of those slowdowns that we experience, they're going to know they're coming before they happen, and they're going to be able to react to it before you guys even know. It will be really nice. And then the other thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to pick a support partner and work with the City of Columbus to offer us the highest level of support and actually be a partner with us, right? We want someone that can help us grow our implementation following go live. And so we have actually partnered with On Actuate Consulting. I believe some of them are actually joining us on the web today. So if they are, hello. Talk a little bit more about them when we get to our status update. And the vendor portal as we know it today will no longer exist. It is not offered with 365. It is being replaced with something called vendor collaboration. We have made it a very high priority as part of this project. We want to offer our vendors a very good experience. So we will be making sure that the usability is there for our vendors so that they can bid, so they can see their checks, so that they can see POs. And we are going to reduce our dependency on third party. So TCM is going away. Anybody upset about that? No, nobody here? Okay. All right, good. So TCM goes away. We're going to go back to using standard attachments. And the other thing that means is that right now we kind of have this security restriction, and it does need to be in place today, where you guys have to put everything in the Z drive, or you can attach it. It goes away with 365. So thank you all for coming. No, just kidding. And then the other thing, which is really, really important to me, we want to develop a large set of automated tests so that we can reduce the resources that we need when they release new products. So what that means is that we're going to be spending a lot of time. It's not going to be 100% ever, really. You can't automate everything. But by the time we go live, we want to have a great set of, is that you or is that me? We want to have a great set of automated tests that we can run every single time that Microsoft releases a product update to us. You literally just hit start, it goes through, creates a PR, creates a PO, creates an invoice, all the key functions that the city does. Not only is it going to be faster for us, but right now, and myself included, we're testing manually just on what we have up here. We have some base scenarios, and then we go, oh, but this happens too, and that happens too. And we try to test all of that, but it's not consistent between every single release. This adds consistency. For me so far? With this project, the options were to migrate what we have today into 365 or to re-implement. So if we migrate, we're basically taking the configuration we have today and we're lifting it over to 365. Okay? So the time frame for that to complete is about 12 to 14 months. Or we could re-implement as if it was a brand new, completely brand new system to the City of Columbus. We would be completely reconfiguring 365, pretty close to similar of starting from scratch. And the timeline is going to be 2 years plus to do that effort. So we chose to migrate, and there's a couple reasons for that that we'll get to here. But what migrate means is that although we're going to make changes and improvements along the way, the main priority for this project is to get us to 365, right? As soon as we possibly can. Continue to expand our use of 365. So some of the things that you're going to see immediately: improved performance. I mentioned no TCM, so we're going to use those standard attachments only. You're going to see a new purchase order layout, a new free text invoice layout, as well as some others. We're working on enhancements to multiple existing reports. So I know there's a lot of requests, including myself, to see like dimension information in certain reports. It's just not there. We're going to try to get that in as part of this initial go live. a new vendor portal, automated interfaces that I mentioned earlier, training. So we have training for this project. So there's going to be some online support guidance, which I'll demonstrate here in a little bit. We'll have some in-class and some online sessions as well. The goal is that everyone that wants it, which hopefully is everyone, gets some form of training before the day that we go live. My favorite, we're connecting via the web right now, right? So we can connect from anywhere. There's no more having to be in your office on the Columbus network. It's just a URL, right? So if you really want to work from home, right, you can log in from home. Obviously, you have to have proper security. We're not asking people to work from home. That was a bad joke. But it's flexible, right? You don't have to have the little icons on your desktop anymore. If you're helping us test, you don't have to have the little test icon on your desktop anymore. I can just send you a URL and you can immediately log in with your credentials. As I said, we're going to continue to enhance and expand the use of 365, kind of as phase 2 of this project after go live. So I wanted to take a minute and just kind of talk about who Project Elevate is, who our members are. Our executive sponsor is Auditor Megan Kilgore. Darlene Wilds, the deputy auditor, is in the back over here. Joe Lombardi from Finance and Management. My boss, Tom Norca, Director of Financial Systems, myself, 2 individuals from our implementation partner that are on our team as well, the CIO for OnActuate and my counterpart, the PM from OnActuate. And then we're actually lucky enough to have a member directly from Microsoft serving on our steering. We're getting constant updates about our project, making recommendations. So very Then we have our business and our functional leads. You can see we're covering procurement and vendor collaboration, fixed assets, budgeting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash and bank management, and project management and accounting. So we've tried to cover every core area that we're currently using in DAX. These individuals have been very busy over the last couple of months. Then we wanted to bring in our end users who are subject matter experts really here within the city, right? We wanted a lot of participation. We welcomed as much participation as possible from all of the different departments. So I'm happy to say that we have development, public utilities, health, the auditor's office, finance, rec and parks, neighborhoods, a lot of people from public service. So thank you, public service, and the treasurer's office as well. So all of these individuals, these people on this list, over the course of the project, they're going to become your subject matter expert, right? They're involved in every aspect of the project. They're going to be involved in testing, training, and serve as that point of contact for you after we go live. I'll quickly go through a status of where we are today. We kicked off the project August 21st. We immediately went into 3 weeks of intense analysis for each of the areas that we use in DAX. Most of those were 2-day sessions where we talked about everything that we do in DAX, everything that we love in DAX, about everything we hate in DAX, what we wanted to see improved, what we struggled with, what took the longest. We talked about all of that stuff. And then from there, those sessions ended on 9/11. OnActuate went back and they took all of the information that we gave them and they compiled 3 documents for us, a business requirements document, a process enhancement document, which also includes the gap analysis, and then a process catalog. So right now, all of those are pending final reviews and sign off. On process catalog real quick. This is a catalog of every single process that we complete within DAX. I think it's the first time we've had all of that in one specific location. The reason that it's so important is because that's what we're going to use to create all of our test cases to make sure that 365 meets all of our needs. So that's going to be one of the main documents we're working off of. And then the process enhancement and the gap analysis, equally important. So a lot of the things on the process improvement, those are the things that we want to do better, right? Learn how to do it better. So we know that we're not going to be able to get them all done by day one of go live, right? So we have this sizable list of things that we can go back through and evaluate and then implement enhancements once we go live. In addition to that, we're also working on interface designs. We're beginning report development. We actually have a development, three development and one training environment's already set up. Demo time. One thing that I definitely want to stress, demo out of the box. There is nothing specific about the city of Columbus in this system yet. Okay, a lot of what you're going to see looks very similar to what you guys see today, only in the web and a lot more user friendly. All right, but there is nothing specific to Columbus. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to keep our review fairly brief. I just want to get you guys a visual, right, of what's coming. And then I'm going to talk specifically about some of the things that will help you guys as a user. And then each time that we meet for the Dynamics user group, we'll continue to demo additional things within 365. I want that ringtone. It's like intro music for 365. I was really hoping someone would jump up and dance. I really was. Okay, so this is our training environment, one of our training environments for 365. So it looks quite a bit different, right, on this particular page. Again, you'll notice that I am directly in the web browser. Today I'm using Chrome, I think. And so this is the first thing that you see when you log in. Keep in mind, I'm right now a system administrator within the system, so I am seeing a heck of a lot of stuff on this right-hand side that will be tailored to whatever user roles that you have. Our menu is kind of moved over onto the left-hand side here. We have a couple different options that I'll talk about today. So the first one is what I affectionately refer to as the hamburger icon. We're used to kind of accessing our DAX menu from across the top, or some of you from the left lower corner. It's now accessible from the hamburger icon. So we have a couple things. We have favorites, and you'll see that I've added all purchase orders to the favorites. We have a nice one that I like called recent, so it will show you where you've recently been. Workspaces, and I'm going to touch on what workspaces are because I just realized I forgot to show one more slide. And then if we go down to our modules, this is more similar to what we're used to seeing. So if I go procurement and sourcing, my menu is going to jump out on the right-hand side. I have the option of expanding all of the options, or I can collapse all of them too. Okay. So if I expand purchase requisitions, all purchase requisitions, we'll say that's one that I go to all the time. All I have to do is place a little star or select the little star next to it, and then that is going to immediately add it to my favorites. So now I have it accessible for me very quickly. That I really like, that I think you guys will like. So a lot of the times I know I want to go to all purchase orders, but I'm a pretty fast typer, so I can almost type it faster than I can navigate through the different menu options. If we come up to the top here at the search bar and I start typing in all purchase orders, it's going to immediately pop up a list of possible menu options for me. And the more specific that I type, of course, the more it will dwindle down the options that I have. Accidentally just opened that page. What I meant to do. So the same is true if I want to see pending invoices. I can start typing that in. It's going to pop up that menu option for me. And then one final one, purchase orders assigned to me. There it is. Okay. So there are multiple ways to get to everything. We know that from DAX today. I kind of liked this one just because I am a fast typer and I could kind of bring up that menu option pretty darn quick. Next thing I want to cover, I'm going to go back to PowerPoint just for 1 second. So 365 has this concept of workspaces, okay? So workspaces, Microsoft definition, centralized access point available to users to easily access data, tasks, and reports to make their work experience more efficient and effective. Basically what that means is you can take everything that you do in a given day, whether it's POs, receiving, invoicing, you look at a specific report every day, budget analysis, you can kind of create your own workspace with all of that immediately available. So then you don't even have to go to the top and search for different menu options because everything you need is kind of on one page. So a workspace is made up of tiles, which you see on the left. And so the example I have up there, I can't see that far. See this? What does that say? In planning, I think it is. This is just an example for a project. But basically the tile is, you could do POs that are in review. And whenever you opened your screen, it would show you the number of POs that were in review for you at any given time. So that number is 23. I also have a tile for all projects up there. If I move over to the middle is more of a traditional list, like what we're used to today in 2012. But I can add all the ones that are relevant to me. So this particular one is active projects. I could add a list that would have a little link right below it for recently closed projects, anything that's relevant to me. I could add one for all POs. And then those lists, every time I open my workspace, those would be available to me just like that without having to switch screens or go through another menu option. On the right-hand side, pretty self-explanatory. These are links, right? So I don't need to show them as a list. I don't need them to give me a summary when I open up the screen. A perfect candidate to put on the links would be budget analysis. So you can kind of configure your own. We as a city can say, you know, we have basic roles. We want the invoicer to start off with this workspace. And so we might, you know, give them 5 or 6 different options that we think all invoicers need. And then they can modify it themselves from there.
Really customized. In my mind, I'm thinking like possible split. So that could be like supplies versus service capital.
Yeah.
Operating individual programs within your department.
I haven't tried it yet. If it's available, and there are a lot of fields available, you should be able to, but I have not actually tried it yet. Very soon. Okay, so I have created a workspace for myself here for today's demo called Cheryl's Daily Work. So if I go ahead and click on this, right now all I have are a couple links set up, and then I do have some tiles, right? So on the left, we see that I have 3 pending vendor invoices, and obviously I manage users, so I have my user tile on there as well. And then I have similar links because I was just playing around. I have links to go to users, and then I have links to go to organizational hierarchies. Right now, I don't have any lists in the middle. So what we're going to do is actually create one of those so that you guys can see how this works. I am going to go to all purchase orders. Go ahead and open it up. Anybody notice how fast that was? I was expecting applause, but okay, I'm just saying. Man, you guys are just coming out swinging, aren't you? Along for the hard ones. Actually, I have not played with budget analysis yet. I know, yes. Trust me, it's at the top of the list. Okay, so right now I see my list of all purchase orders. One thing to note is that since the screen does have related information over here, you can close that up and then you can open that back up and then you can see last purchase orders. I don't think there's a ton of information in here right now, but similar to what we see today, only we can kind of close that box and get it out of the way when we don't need it. And then our list in the middle, one thing to note is that we do scroll from left to right. So as you guys are customizing your and having it show the fields that you want to see that are relevant to you, you can have a lot. It's just, it's going to scroll kind of from left to right. I want to demonstrate how we filter, right? 'Cause a lot of us have done the Control G and then we enter in the special characters, and it doesn't work that way at all anymore. So I think it's a little bit nicer of a user experience. Created by, you'll notice it now says CA read. It does not have 6327 CARE. So our usernames will be at least a little bit better, easier to understand. So I want to filter just so that I see my items. All I'm going to do is click right on top of created by. And I have my options to sort A to Z, Z to A. And then you'll notice down here created by, and it says begins with. Okay, so I can immediately start typing in, or I have other options as well. So contains, is not, is exactly, does not contain. So if I want to do begins with, I'm just going to type in CARE. I'll hit apply. It just shows the items that were created by me. Pretty simple. I also want to add in a column. So I'm going to right click on top of that header row, select add columns. Those columns are going to pop up on the right hand side. I want to add the created date and time. So I'm just going to type in the word create, do a search, and it immediately shows me my created date and time for purchase orders. So I just put a check mark next to this and I hit insert. Now, if I scroll across, now I have my created date and time included as well. This is considerably easier to personalize than what we're currently doing in 2012. And I know that some people have mastered it, so definitely applause to them. This is better for the masses, right? This is much easier. Yeah.
Quick question. As you look through when you're able to filter information, I know we've talked a lot about how we can filter based on diversity or EWB. Is that being considered in the new iteration? Administration?
So definitely nothing to demonstrate yet. We're way too early. Spend information obviously is part of it. And all of the features that we had incorporated for certifications and which vendors are certified, all of that stuff is in scope. It is dependent on another project you got going though, so we'll have to talk more about that.
Under consideration that departments themselves, their diversity been through that without the intervention.
Potentially, absolutely, yes. So then one last thing on here I would like to show, say that I want to add this list now to my workspace that I showed you guys a minute ago. So I am going to go up to the top, and underneath personalize, I see an option that says add to workspace. I'm just going to select that. It says, okay, tell me which workspace you want to put this on. So it's defaulting to Cheryl's daily work because it's the one I used previously. And then tell me how you want it to display. Do you want it to be a tile? Do you want it to be a list, or do you want it to be a link? So I'm going to go ahead and say list, and then I'm just going to hit configure. And then I can go ahead and name it. So I'm just gonna call this all purchase orders for quickness. But I can give it any specific name that I want so that it's relevant to me. Okay. And if we go back and take a look at my workspace, now in the middle, I have my all purchase orders. And you can add multiples of those. So right underneath all purchase orders, you would see your next tab so that you can just flip back and forth between them as you work throughout the day. And then final thing I'll show on this, and this is a rough draft. Okay, so this is where I said give me some leniency. 365 has what is called a task recorder. I mentioned right now that all of our training material is great, but it's outside of the system, right? So users have to remember to go where it's located, pull the right document. With 365, we actually have a feature up here in the help section. If I can't navigate that way. Up here in the help section where you'll be able to type in, how do I create a PO? We'll bring up specific instructions for the city of Columbus, okay? So all the help documentation will be moving into 365 itself. The other thing that's really cool actually act as a guide for me. I'm a new user and I don't know what I'm doing. Open up this guide. This big box came up. Okay, so the first one is an oops, you seem to have gotten off a track. So if you're not following what the system tells you, then it's going to let you know. I couldn't figure out how to get step one out of here before the demonstration, so that's why it says oops. Go to the next instruction. The next instruction is going to tell me go to all purchase orders. So, okay, I'll go to all purchase orders. Says, great, you did that. Now the next thing you need to do is hit add or hit new. Hit new. It says, great, now you need to enter in a vendor account. So it will walk a new user straight through the system on how they need to do stuff, right? So no one will ever do a PO wrong again. This is going to fix everything. No, but in honestly, and in all fairness, it should help, right? Because we mentioned our new users are not really, they're getting a link to some documentation. You can actually get something that will guide them through. We don't have anything in here right now, of course, but this show more, show less, we can add in specific content for City of Columbus. So we can put, our current documentation has the huge exclamation marks right now to kind of say, hey, make sure you do this. That same type of material can go in here as well. Yes, ma'am.
Documentation well on everything, but if something goes sideways while you're working on it, there's not a lot of ways to go back.
I would have to argue with you unless I have specific examples, but that's okay. I mean, I get where you're going.
Attaching purchase agreements to POs is still kind of a nightmare. You can attach them in the PR.
That's Sean's fault.
Oh, is it? I figured as much. But that's still a huge bugaboo. You can work all day and not get one attached to a PR. In my case, I'm like, okay, well, I can make a link when I get.
Love to review those with you. So next time you got one, give me a call. Yeah. Yes, this is not going to fix everything as much as I would like it to, but
I just think that a little bit of documentation, like, this is like sometimes you will not get the contract you want. Getting rid of it can be problematic as well. So.
Okay. Yeah,
Cheryl,
we should talk. Yeah.
Cheryl mentioned at the top about documenting, and a number of us have been involved in some of those documenting steps and have your
list of things to be.
Perfect.
Carol mentioned, a lot of people are doing stuff now in this room, right? Gather some of them. Thank you for asking that, and I have it written down here. And just if someone asks a question, just
Oh, valid point. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So basically, we are planning to utilize this and add in as many of our standard processes as we can, not only to help new users, but to help someone who maybe does an invoice 3 times a year, right? Yeah.
Will we be able to delete?
Will you be able to delete attachments?
Sometimes, you know.
I'm going to give the solid answer of it depends, right? Because I think now we're not using TCM, which TCM doesn't allow you to delete, right? Because the idea is we don't want a PO to get approved and then the supporting documentation to be deleted afterwards. So we have restrictions around that. I would assume there will be similar restrictions discussed for standard attachments. Because the biggest risk we have is someone going in and accidentally pulling up the wrong document and wiping out all the attachments when that's not what they meant to do. Yeah.
This page you added to Workspaces, I filtered it before you added it. Stay filtered?
If I knew how to save a view yet, it would. I'm still learning that part. But yes, you can customize all of the tiles and the list that you add. And I'm sorry for those online. The question was, I had filtered my list before I added it to my workspace. Is that going to be saved? And the answer is yes, you can create multiples of those with different filters. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you think about, the question was, would it be possible to let us delete attachments until a certain stage? Now that we're kind of going away from TCM and we're moving back to just standard attachments, we have to discuss that whole process, right? Because obviously, I don't want to delete every document that you didn't mean to put in there, right? And that's an absolute valid need. So yeah, we'll be discussing that for sure.
Work around for now. Do a -1, because that generally holds the documents in there, I think, for a number of invoices. -1 after whatever. Trying to get rid of, say you attach the wrong document or request that it's made, and you don't want to confuse next person who might be reviewing your report. Do a -1 or a -A, something like that, it'll hide all of those previous documents.
Really?
In most cases.
That's probably a defect.
You're in essence giving
We'll
it a
chat
new,
about that.
you're giving it a new identifier.
Right. I'm not going to repeat that one for the online group because I'm not sure we should do that. Okay, any other questions? This is kind of what I wanted to show you guys today for 365. I know I'm an IT geek, but I kind of got excited about some of these features. Usability, speed seemed to be a little better as well. Yes, ma'am.
Will we still be able to see all purchase orders and attachments or only?
Day one go live, you're going to see them all. Moving forward, though, we will be working again on the security to lock that. So I know we've got people that use other people's GBRs and accidentally edit POs that they shouldn't edit. And so we're going to be looking at that once we
Or
go
maybe
live.
just once they're. For me, it's helpful for documentation purposes, like I did a contract with people last week, just getting the contract signed back from the vendor was like pulling teeth, let alone getting certificates. We'll pull up another agency's PO with the same vendor as attachments that they had attached to their PO, or just as fine for mine, instead of having to argue back or not back and forth with the vendor trying to get the required documentation. So it's helpful for that purpose, not that I want anybody else using my GPR to
Right.
purchase supplies, but just to, from a view standpoint.
So for those online, kind of the question was, when we go live with 365, will I still be able to see everybody's purchase orders or only my own? And the response to that is, day one, you'll still be able to see all. We're going to be looking to some degree, obviously, to lock that down. But I have heard the feedback that, hey, I go out and look at other agencies, similar POs to assist me. So I think that's something valid that we'll need to take a look at as well.
Procurement codes that you might look at how an agency did it. Sometimes, I mean, it's more to ease, as opposed to giving feedback that
Right.
want it set up one way.
We field a lot of questions from vendors. I may not have been the one who made the purchase order, but they may be calling me and say, hey, we delivered this 60 days ago, how come we're not paid?
So purchasing kind of gets a pass, right? Because you guys are working
Well, and I'm not
citywide.
doing
So
anything. I'm just clicking on, is there an invoice?
Mhm.
Yeah. That kind of
So I will say with those types of questions, you're fielding questions from the vendor. The vendor collaboration piece is going to be much more user friendly for the vendor as well. Eventually, actually, we'll probably even have some type of mobile app that they can go in and see payments that are coming to them, those types of things. It's maybe not day one, but it's coming. I've already played with it. So, okay, so last question, and then we'll move on to Marnie.
Integration with other software applications. I asked for integration with performance, great information overnightly with populate. Lost that.
Are you also in the process of kind of looking for another system? Did we chat or maybe somebody else? Okay. So I haven't specifically had conversations about the question for those online is with third parties. What I will say is our general directive is we're trying to get away from third parties as much as possible. So we talked about like the TCM and Tyler Forms. However, integrations with systems like that, they're not part of our initial scope for the project. It would definitely be something I'd be interested in talking to you guys about down the line, because there are many modules in DAX as well that we're not using, right? So it might be something that we could actually do inside of DAX, or if not, definitely something that we could talk about an integration with. Because you guys are double keen today, right?
What's that?
You guys are double keen.
Yeah, we're putting it,
Yeah.
our people that are paying the invoice tax are the same. Project.
Anything like that where you're doing double work, I'd love to talk with you and just see what we can come up with. Maybe after initial go live, right? But yeah, definitely keep me in mind for that.
So Cheryl, the general rule of thumb is that to provide data out of DAX, and this is, we're honestly in the same boat. Yeah, we need to pull in, spend data.
So I think that it's a case by case basis for sure, because what he needs is probably basic invoice data that he can export out himself and bring into another system, whereas an effort like what you're thinking is a much larger integration. So I mean, from a staffing perspective and time frame and resources, we would just have to evaluate every option. The idea is it's your data though, right? We have issues getting you access to your data today. We want you to have the data that you need to do your job. So that's the overarching principle, but we'd have to evaluate each one. It could be Power BI. There's also another concept that we haven't talked about so much yet called data entities. That is a potential. We do have multiple reporting options now, so we have a little bit more freedom, if you will, at getting to our data.
being generated in such a way that down that path, we'll just pull the data.
Yeah, so when we talked about the process improvement documentation, we have a whole list of reports where we have people who've said, you know, this report is great, but I need X, Y, and Z also. So we've made notes of all of those and we're prioritizing them. We have, as part of our initial go live project, we have factored in 40 reports that we want to either create or enhance from what they are today. And then of course, you know, we're just going to Power BI is really more of like a business intelligence tool. So if any of you guys have used things like Cognos or Tableau, where you can kind of pull in the information that you need so that it's not a static report, right? Static reports never work. They're great for the first time you run it and then you go, man, I wish I had that. Power BI is more of a flexible tool where you can pull in that different data that's available to meet your needs for that particular scenario.
Notice that our office wasn't on the have our concerns been added to the list that are and are under consideration. We go down this path, that will help us get to what we need, where we need to be, recognizing that we're going to be.
Yeah, so I actually had firsthand knowledge of all of that because I was working with Tia to get everything set up in DAX up until the shift. So I have all of that included, and I think then you and I need to work on what does the path forward look like. That's what I was expressing last time that we met, because business processes are going to change, data needs are going to change, it all changes, right? But certifications, marking a vendor with their minority classifications, all of those have been included. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on now. Marnie is going to come give us a demonstration from DAX 2012 on Accounting Source Explorer.
Before you depart, one question, you showed how nice and fast it was. And one of the questions was, will it be that fast with our own data?
The idea is to improve performance. So that is the goal. Obviously, this system has a fraction of the data that Columbus does, but that comes back to the proper sizing with Microsoft, right? So they're always monitoring and evaluating and looking for our needs. We have very small data if you think about some of the other large customers for Dynamics. So I feel like I don't want to say yes 100% because someone's going to be like, you said, but yeah, that's obviously the biggest goal of this entire project, is to get better performance.
All right, so I'm Marnie Hall, and I'm going to talk about another tool that's out there in Dynamics right now called Accounting Source Explorer. And we've actually had it for a little bit, but there are some limitations in it, and we're trying to flush some of that out before we rolled it out to everybody. One item is it like the trial balance that you have to open it for the entire city for all the dimensions, and then you filter down. So Accounting Source Explorer is the same thing. It's a 1 year at a time, and it has to populate for all the transactions citywide before you can filter. So that, because of that, it takes a long time to open. When I've been using it quite a bit, and I'd say consistently when you're a constant user, it takes about 6 minutes to open. So, get to work, open it up, go get a coffee or a Diet Dew like me. Another thing is it does have project ID information if you have projects, but only for actions that start with procurement. So anything that's a PO to invoice, you're going to see project ID information on those transactions. But if it's an ALE transaction, like a cost correction or your payroll related, it currently doesn't have project ID populated in this reporting tool. Though I do have a support ticket open with Tyler Support. So there's hope that that'll get populated later. So it's only if you're looking at posted invoice information where you also get the project ID, the 6+6 number in this table. Open this table and it has a lot of data. So some of you might use trial balance to get your information, and then that's 1 year at a time. You might, and then you have to pick your financial dimension set within that trial balance, and depending on which dimension set you pick, depends on what you see. Or you might use voucher inquiry reporting, and for that you have to put in your dimensions first, and then it gives you back the data. And for that, you do get multiple years. You can get multiple years of output at a time. But Accounting Source Explorer, it's transaction detail level, but it's 1 year at a time. Okay, and the data goes way off to the right here. You're only seeing 10 columns there, but there's 20 columns of data. Some other information, let's just kind of scroll over. You got your voucher number, you have your document number, which could be your invoice number, your PO number. Your ledger account. Here's another, and I'm going to do a demonstration of how to use it. In the trial balance, you can parse your ledger into separate columns for every financial dimension. You don't have that ability in this tool, so you have to use your wildcards within that column to get specific dimensions. You get the dollar amount, going all the way to the right, and you get, it's blank right here, but party name is the same thing as the vendor name. There's a product field. I'm going to demonstrate that. So that's going to be your procurement category. And then document, line document reference all the way to the right here. That's the one I think people are going to find really useful on your posted invoice information, because it's going to tell you what PO that invoice was paid on. And also, if you're shopping the catalog, the invoice information, well, any invoice, it's line level information. So it's not just the total amount of the invoice posted, it's the total by line. Okay, so it's just a lot of really useful information. So having said that, let's give it a roll. I got 2 examples I'm going to demonstrate. One of them is going to be a project inquiry. So it's going to be a project that has multiple sub-projects involved. So the first thing you're going to do, and we have added additional pages to the reporting and inquiry training tool. We're getting the process of getting that posted to our intranet site. Similar to a trial balance, you have to go up to parameters to pick which year you want to query. So right now it's on 2019. Every year of data we have in Dynamics, you can pick an earlier year. That year has already been defaulted here. And then let's say in my example, I want to query on project, and I'm just going to pick the financial dimension project, the financial dimension of the project. I'm not going to pick the actual project ID, so I can see all the project IDs associated with that project. So I'm going to go under this ledger account, and I'm going to put in my P650800. I just kind of picked one off of our list. And then, that project dimension is a component of that whole account, ledger account. And so if I do this drop down, contains, that automatically is going to put my wild card on either side, so I don't have to actually type in the wild card. And then under main account, because this inquiry is giving you all encumbrance transactions and all expense transactions, revenue transactions. So I want to, under main account, put in 6 star so that I can just get the expense transactions. Okay, now we got to give it a chance to.
Do you need music? You have music over there.
Yeah.
Intro.
Yeah. So So it is a lot of data to filter through, so sometimes it can take a bit.
Module.
This is excellent question. The question was, where do you find this fantastic reporting tool? What is in General Ledger? It's right underneath in the comment area under Advanced Ledger Entry. So we're filtered here. And so now, if you could, my reading glasses, project ID, you know what, I might wonder if I it's probably up to the right here. We've got party name, which is the vendor number. We've got name. Keep going. We have the product column is procurement category, which not everybody's going to use. Keep going to the right. You've got line document reference. That's the column that has the PO number. And oh, project ID is way off to the side. I had reordered mine on the version I use, because I would look at product ID a lot. So you can reorder the order of these columns. All the project IDs, and then from here, you know, you do the old Control-T, and you export it in Excel, and then you can summarize it any way you want. So if it's something you just wanted to know of this project, I want to know how much we've spent per vendor on each sub-project. This tool would give you it to you right there, export it in Excel, then you can summarize it. We'll see how long it takes to export. Still got some performance issues of going slow.
Control-G is good point.
This.
I stumbled upon like a list of all the shortcuts for that. And, it was like there was like
So the question that was just asked,
very interesting.
Control-G is going away and D365, but Control-T is not. But Cheryl said she's working on a shortcut list. All right, so now we have all that data in Excel, and if we want to just maybe do a pivot table, which some of you may spend more times in pivot tables than others, but it's a great tool to learn. But under Insert, Pivot Table, and then OK, and then once you click within that pivot table, all the different fields that are available are going to be off to the right. And so if I go all the way down, I remember project ID was near the end. Pick that, and then participants list is blocking my. I want to get to amounts, but can I move that? Oh, there we go. There we go. Thank you. And then I can go up to amount. And now I can see how much within this project, I can see by sub-project how much we've spent. And then I can say, well, maybe I want to have, I want to know by vendor. So if I move the project ID to columns, and then I pick party name, vendors will swap that. See now, here by sub-projects, this is where we've spent all of our money. And there are just lots of ways you can summarize it. So we've heard feedback, a lot of people, they're like, well, I sure wish I knew of my invoices posted. I sure wish I knew which POs that those came off of, or what vendors we had all in one location, or even by financial dimension. So this is a tool for being able to do that. Any questions on that example? Limitations, you saw it was a little slow, but it's a lot because it's a lot of data. Okay, it's a lot of data. But I found that it's been very useful with some of my research and inquiries. All right, so now we're going on to our second scenario where Darlene came to my office the other day and she said, Marnie, where did all of our supply money go? And I'm like, you know, who's buying supplies in our office and who's taking up all of our supply money? So I'm like, So anyway, just like any other grid, you can do, there's the undo button. So I clicked on the upper right button to get the filters off. And so, okay, well, I know that the auditor's office division is 2201. So I'm going to filter on that division. You see it, you know, some of these tools, the more you use them, it's like they do get a little quicker. So I filtered on 2201 and it was like that. But I'm only interested in the expense transactions, not the encumbrances. So I'm going to do a 6 asterisk. Of course, no, that wasn't too bad. And I know that our office does almost all of its shopping at Staples. Actually, I just made that up. But we're going to say that it was mostly with Staples. So I'm going to go over party number, and I'm going to put in the Staples vendor number. Oops. There we go. See? All right. Wait for that to filter. Yes.
I thought you mentioned earlier it didn't have object class ones.
No, what it doesn't have is for project transactions that get into the system by an ALE. Those are in here, but they don't have the project ID field populated. Every transaction that you would see in the trial balance or in a voucher inquiry, any financial transaction that gets into the system through a subledger entry, it's in this tool. It's just that it doesn't have all the project ID populated if it got into the system through an ALE. But all your purchasing type transactions has the project ID field. It's only as good if people don't put in the right project ID or they forget the project ID and it'll be missing. All right, so here we have all of the auditor's office, of the City Hall portion of the auditor's office, all of their supply purchases. Then I'm going to export that into Excel. Okay. Almost. Processing. So far with this tool, have you seen something in it that you didn't realize you could get to before, or things would you like to get out of a tool like this? As I'm done. Okay, we'll go back to that question because I got my data now. All right, so I'm going to do a pivot table, insert table, and the procurement category is one of the fields, and that is in the field called product. On product, that gives me all the things that we've bought, and then I go back up to amount, and here I can see basically where we're spending our supplies on. And I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing too big that jumps out except the highest item is a calculating machine, because you know in the auditor's office love a good adding machine. So that's where our money went. And then you're like, well, you know, so-and-so got that one adding machine and it was so awesome the way it added those numbers. I want to get one for the new hire. So then if I go in here and just double click, I get all the line information from that purchase. And I can go all the way over here and remember, well, what was that model? And then, oh, I think I just passed it. We got the line text. It was a Sharp Electronics Corp, and then the description. That was a double line. Anyway, then now you know exactly what adding machine got purchased just from drilling down into the data. Okay? So sometimes people want to know, I'm trying to remember what details I purchased. This is a place where you can get that. Financial dimension. So, questions on that? So back at you.
Sean, you have a few words for us about service contracts?
You being the operative word. Just a reminder, I don't know if they're true, that some people are telling their directors that any contract under 50,000, we don't need to bid. I just hope that's not a true rumor. Just a reminder that we do have to do informal bidding. The threshold under 5 is slightly different. It says something to the effect of, I should have written it down, competition where appropriate. Between 5 and 50, we still have to do informal bidding. And the only difference between formal and informal is the amount of time required. Formal requires at least 7 days. Usually we do more. Informal requires 24 hours. Usually we do more. And whether or not it needs to appear in the city bulletin. So I reminded you of that. So please stay reminded. So I don't have to keep saying it over and over again. We will be looking into that a little more to make sure. Yes.
Do you want to make a distinction between
Professional, yeah. Yeah, so professional services is its own section of the code. There's not much leeway if you're over 20. Under 20, language, the same type of language I just used before. I don't have it in front of me, but competition where appropriate, reasonable measures. I've always, when I actually presented the cabinet once, I just at least get 2 quotes if at all possible. And that threshold, that authority is with your director or your appointing authority. I always think it's best to give her or him the option to look at 2 proposals if possible, if you have time. And especially if we have a local minority or female vendor available, I would definitely include one of those vendors. Between 20 and 50, the code, I'm not going to get into it here, but the code is rather confusing what you have to do or not. You can do what you want, essentially, if council says it's okay. 20 and 50, but still there needs to be, on professional services, there needs to be some type of process. The only other thing I wanted to say, Sue's getting ready to present. What she's going to present to you came out of a procurement outreach group. That was Director Lombardi's idea to meet with some of our bigger customer agencies. I purposely didn't show up to these, so I didn't steer or if anyone wanted to say anything that wouldn't say in front of me, they had Sue's not afraid to say whatever she wants to say in front of me, but that's fine. I don't care. I have 7 kids. I don't care. Someone doesn't like me at all times. But what's I going to say? In all seriousness, the group came up with this idea that Sue's ready to present, and I know Sue has spent innumerable hours making this work. It's really good what you're going to see. If it's still sort of a pilot, we're trying to create a user classification that can have some of the powers to do this without having too many powers. A superwoman like Sue, so we don't trust some of you as much as we trust Sue, essentially. Or we can keep our eyes on one person. But once you see this, if you're interested in doing something similar, please let me know through email, because you do need the approval of Director Lombardi to do this currently. I have a feeling most of you are going to be interested. Thank you, Sue, again.
Cheryl.
Yeah, I really
Sue did a lot of work.
You did. Almost not all of the work.
Okay, so I'm going to be Sue as we walk through this presentation. However,
Sue will be answering any questions that maybe I can't. So I was part of the procurement outreach group initially, and then got removed away from that team for a while. And I have to second that Sue has done tremendous work. I'm actually pretty excited to be presenting this, even if you're over there. We have you on display. So, has it been about a year that you've been working with purchasing probably on this? It's okay. So DPU has been working with purchasing to centralize the service contracts used by their department. This includes 6 plants and various maintenance facilities. So they had some goals for what they wanted the outcome of this pilot to be. They wanted better visibility into the services that they were actually procuring. So instead of just data, valuable data, right? Information. They wanted to reduce the number of contracts and resource hours used to create yearly contracts for very similar service areas. They wanted to increase consistency within their department, streamline approvals and invoicing, and the dreaded blanket purchase order. I kind of have that in, because that is my term for it only. They want to reduce the number of blanket purchase orders that require cancellation at the end of the year. And when I say blanket, I mean that a PO was created at the beginning of each year for each location. The funds thus were tied up on the purchase order, and then they got to the end of the year and not all of those funds were used. So then they had to go through this whole cancellation process. Another goal is they only wanted to issue a PR or PO when a valid need arose, right? So the funds are reserved at the GVR level, but they didn't want all the money encumbered on the PO. All right, so what have they tried this with so far? Parts washing service, which I still don't think I totally understand, but that's actually going to be our study, our use case today. They've done this with city flags, a huge one they've done with, which was a ton of work, copier service, wildlife control service, court reporting, clean field dumping, security guard, fire extinguisher, and first aid. And I read all of those because you can see there's a wide variety of different service areas that they've worked with. I know for those of you in the room, this is really, really difficult to read, so I apologize for that. So I'm gonna walk you through it. 19 contracts are good for 3 years. What they did in 2018, which is a yearly contract, was created. So this means that no additional bidding is going to be required for most of the items until 2020. Did I get the dates wrong there? I think I did. 3 years, 2021. Copier contracts typically good for about 2 years. The important thing on this screen, the first column, it's a comparison of the service areas and what they did in 2018. So in 2018, if we just look at the copier service at the bottom, they did 38 RFQs, separate RFQs. The number of blanket POs or contracts that they had, 49. And the number of PAs that they had, 5. Right? That was good for 1 year. Is that correct? That was good for 1 year. And then they had to do everything over again. So in 2019, if we also look at copier services, they did a total of 6 RFQs. That's down 84% from what they did in 2018. And they ended up with 0 blanket POs or contracts. So when I say blanket, again, I'm talking about issuing that PO at the beginning of the year with a chunk of money. So my favorite, 5,000 is the quantity, and then the unit of measure is US dollars, right? So those are the blankets that I'm talking about. They've done 0 of those in 2019, and they have 6 PAs. So an equal number of RFQs to match the number of PAs that they have. Reduction in the number of contracts, 88%. Huge. For copiers, I think you said it's 2 years because some of them were still under contract. So it's 2 years before you have to renew versus 3. Is that correct?
We were trying to get them on the same. buy a copier, I'll know that there's 3 years of service with it. So it's gonna be a constant trying to get them all, the majority on the same.
So then if we look at the part washing service, which again is what we're going to cover today, in 2018, they had 10 contracts. Now they're down to 1 for 2019. So we're going to kind of walk through how they got here. They did things before. Each plant or group, maintenance facility, to say it properly, would originate their own contract with distinct yearly pricing, right? So you said it was possible that one plant had different pricing than the next plant than the next. So in 2018, again, this resulted in contracts for part washing alone, just for part washing. And then I kind of listed out all the different locations that had their own contract. Various methods were utilized within the department. Even though there were 10 contracts, there were only 5 RFQs. Only 1 PA got created, 10 POs got created. So not everybody, it looks like, started with an RFQ, right? Leadership had to review and approve each contract. Workers' compensation and insurance had to be added to each contract, so 10 times redundant. Estimated time to complete the process from start to finish, minimum of 10 to 12 days each. And then, as I mentioned before, they create that blanket PO for the year and put their dollar amount in the quantity field. It was a manual invoice review process because the PO is just the quantity of 5,000 US dollars, right? There's no individual pricing listed on the PO. You guys had to open up the attachment to the contract to actually look at like the TCM attachment, I'm assuming, right? To actually look at the pricing.
Not
So,
only us, but
yeah, so that's a manual piece as well. They suffered from a very time-intensive PO cancellation process at the end of every fiscal year. I want to make sure that we understand that this is 1 year. The new contract is good for 3 years. So if we multiply this by 3, it would have been 30 contracts and over 100 days to get the same number of contracts created. So this is an example of what it looks like today if they created a PA using their normal process. So if we look at those purchase agreement lines, I have procurement categories, not specific products. And so I can see things like recycling of solvents. Actually, there's a lot of recycling of solvents on there. And miscellaneous paint systems. And that's the only information that I have. When the PO gets created, again, that product name just says miscellaneous paint systems. And then on this one, they have gone in and at least added some additional detail in there to show the pricing for individual services. But again, quantity 5,000, unit of measure, US dollars. So I'm not getting a lot of detail out of this particular PO yet. I want to go back a year later and I want to say, okay, what services did I buy? Time to renew my contract or to create a new contract. I want to see what I spent and what I spent on. What services did I procure? So the way public utilities has been doing it, there's no detail information directly in the system, right? The only thing that we know is that they spent $2,159.40. And if I look at the 4 lines of data that I have, and 4 is important because we're going to see the new way shortly, I just have the dollar amount that was spent on each one, and then it was miscellaneous paint systems. I have no real idea what I actually got. So building a better process. And this is where Sue took a huge leap and organized all of this. So first step in this process was to actually analyze the service contracts department-wide. How many hours did you put into some of these?
copier service was probably weeks. All the invoices, every single PO, every single bid. We had everything needed on the bid.
That took so long because the data that we have in DAX just tells us a dollar amount. It does not tell us what we're buying, right? So that's why all that upfront work was needed. So Sue then would create in DAX. So similar to like our staples are entered in as product items, she has entered in services as products. Okay, that's going to be very important. Then the RFQ gets issued. She's going to add all those services to the RFQ so that she can get quotations from different vendors on the given services that they want to award. And then they're going to award that RFQ, create their PA, notify their users, associate GBRs with those PAs. From there, department purchasers can create a PR using the products right through the employee portal. So just like you do today for, what do you guys use? Chemicals, thank you. Chemicals or staples or whatever it is, you can actually go into the employee portal today and get your services in the same exact fashion. We all know there's a benefit, right, of going through the employee portal. Can anybody tell me what it is? POs, right? So I think that's like maybe the most beautiful thing about this is that Sue has entered in the products, so they're now valid approved products by someone within the fiscal office. There's a valid contract and there's a valid GBR. So these POs that are created now get to go through the expedited approval path, right, and get confirmed by the auditor's office. That's a huge time savings for the auditor's office as well as you guys. All right, so what it looks like now. This is the same purchase agreement that we've looked at that had the recycling solvent, whatever it was on there. There were 4 lines, they were just categories. This is the same one, purchase agreement done the new way. It's now valid for 3 years. And if we look at what is listed there, we now have the specific part numbers that are included with the contract. So lease of paint cleaner, 30-gallon drum, water, I don't know what any of this is, I really don't. But so they're basic services, right? They're offered as part of this contract. So you can already see that we have much more detail here. So when I create my PO now, my PO is very specific. My quantity is 1. My unit of measure is each. My unit price is $155. Get my description and my part number, I know exactly what I bought, right? It's not 155.65 quantity of US dollars. And then just the generic, definition or description that we've been using thus far. I go back to my PA. Now I want to know what services did I buy. The first screen that I showed you had 4 lines on there and it just showed dollar amounts. I have all of this information now that tells me exactly what was ordered and by who. When Sue does the analysis for her next contract, she can just easily export this information to Excel and then do the pivot table. Has moved on before this has. Perfect. So I exported that data to Excel and I did a quick pivot table and I can immediately see what my popular service was. So service of leased 30-gallon parts cleaner with a soaking tank, that has been ordered 21 times by the city of Columbus underneath this contract. So all the days that you spent analyzing what was bought, digging into, for all intents and purposes, digital paper copies of invoices, I did this in less than 5 minutes. So challenges, and correct me if I'm wrong. Some of the initial ones were, initial buy-in with some locations as they learned what this pilot was. The Public Utilities Fiscal Office, time commitment, like we mentioned, they had to do all the initial research to review multiple prior year contracts to determine what they wanted to bid for this collaborative PA this time, or contract this time. And so Sue said it is added responsibility on the Public Utilities Fiscal Office because they set up the products. However, it's also reduced a number of their other work efforts. So the canceling of the POs, the exhaustive reviews of invoices, all of those types of things have been greatly reduced. Benefits that were realized during this pilot definitely adds consistency to their process. As I already mentioned, it's similar to statewide contracts. It meets the requirements for expedited approval. They've indicated that it cuts down on DAX and contract related questions from different departmental areas, only allowed to purchase the products that are on the purchase agreement. It streamlines the invoice process because you guys use three-way match for this. Whereas before the pricing was manually checked against the PO documentation. Previous each invoice because it wasn't a three-way match. So that's no longer needed because of this approach. DPU knows exactly what's being purchased. Storekeepers, it's quicker for them to order these items. They don't have to bid individual contracts each year. As I mentioned before, handled by the fiscal office when the PA expires, and the vendors are when they're bidding for a multiple location contract versus one.
Like, right now, yeah, Midwest Graphics Awards does a terrible adding products that yay, like the contract. That's something that still.
I think you could really add to them. We have not.
So what the contract says, and whether it's through any process. We add stuff to UTC, so if it's a whole contract, we can add whatever that is to the catalog to the category. It depends, oftentimes we call the city attorney, adding something to the contract into changing, that's fair, but you could run into issues where those who didn't bid or didn't win the bid in an unfair situation. Didn't have an opportunity.
Thunder on the user slide. No, so I wanted to get some actual feedback. So I had Sue contact multiple people who've been impacted by this. Storekeepers, what other roles?
Storekeepers, inventory
Control.
people, some managers.
Okay. So this is the feedback from them. I literally cut and pasted it. So my life got much easier. I love it. I appreciate them being available. The real savings is the time for the end users to handle other job responsibilities. I think this is really, really positive feedback. I don't know if you guys have even tried to fully quantify the amount of time that it's saving you guys yet. But I do know that you told me that you now have people calling you saying, hey, can we do, this service this way as well? So the community really is embracing it. And for myself, I think that, we talk about getting better reporting and stuff like that out of 365. We as a community need to keep in mind that the data that we get out of it is only as good as what we put into it. There are a ton of POs where we're using a quantity of US dollar. And I get it. I'm not here to judge anybody. I get it. You're trying to get your work done. There's reasons for doing it. But that is the data that you'll get out of it if that's what you put into it. So just something to keep in the back of your mind, whether it's service contracts or anything that you're doing, the better data that we put into the system, the better reporting you'll be able to get out of it down the road. Okay? And I think that's vastly, vastly important. If you are interested, and Sean kind of already covered this, we are going to roll this out a little slowly, right? We want to talk to you. We want to train you. Must be approved by Sean before you can do it. And as he talked about, there's a role that we're creating so that you can add the products into the system. We have existing user documentation. Sue's been kind enough to work with James Bond to create a user guide that kind of leads through the process from start to finish and how, the things she's learned over the last 10 months. So when you contact Sean, if you'd like to give this a try, think about what service contract you want to try this with first. Start with one. If you get Sean's pre-approval, then I can get the role added to your account and you can get started. Here, access is going to be limited within each department. So 1-2 people max are we going to allow to add products into the system. Obviously, Sean's purchasing group uses the catalogs very heavily for their products as well. And so we just need to make sure that we have control over that.
The main reason for that, obviously, the automatic approval for do that, the more work that is to check that.
I think it's been very successful. The wealth of data that they have now versus before is just kind of, word is shocking, I guess. I mean, no, it was interesting to be able to pull up that report and quickly summarize everything in, less than 5 minutes. Illuminating, thank you. I like it. I'm a dork. I can't help it. Okay, so I told you guys I'd get you out of here a little bit before 4. So some things to think about. We would like to have this user group meeting on a reoccurring basis. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most people are cool with WebEx. But if you loved the in-person, let me know. Gladly continue to do that as well. I will be sending out a link to the recording of this presentation as well as the slides. So anyone who didn't attend, encourage them please to watch this. This is going to be the primary vehicle for getting updates on the Project Elevate for moving to 365. Give some thought about what you would like to see demonstrations on for 2012. We are still going to be on 2012 for another close to a year. So if we can share information, that would be great and help educate everyone in the group. And then if anyone is doing anything illuminating in 2012, I would love to have you guys present to the group ideas, things that you've done to streamline, whatever you've done in DAX that you think you're doing differently than anyone else that could benefit them. I would love to have you guys present at a future meeting. So once I send out the material, feel free to send back your ideas for future meetings. And again, if you want to present as a department, let me know and I will schedule you right away. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you coming very much. And I probably